Imagine this. An innovator becomes so famous, so influential, that her ideas are poised to change an entire nation. And then, poof, she just vanishes from the public conversation. This is the incredible, true story of Maria Montessori's mysterious disappearance from the American spotlight. Okay, so let me paint a picture for you. We're talking about the height of her fame. Maria Montessori wasn't just some teacher. She was an absolute phenomenon. You've got the most famous intellectual in America, John Dewey, introducing her. The place is so packed they have to turn 1,000 people away at the door. She was a rock star. And that's the big question, right? That's the mystery we're going to unravel today. How does an educational giant who gets this massive hero's welcome just fade away? What on earth happened? So, to really understand her fall from grace, you first have to appreciate the incredible heights she reached. When Montessori first hit the scene in the US, it wasn't just a success, it was a full-blown frenzy. I mean, just look at these numbers. They're staggering. Her first book sold out in days. Schools were popping up all over the country. We're talking about the biggest names of the time. Thomas Edison, Helen Keller, they were all singing her praises. Her tour of America was a media circus, and people treated her like she was actual royalty. And if you need one perfect example of her star power, this is it. In 1915, there was this huge World's Fair in San Francisco. She sets up a demonstration classroom with glass walls so everyone could watch. It became the most popular thing there. And get this, it won 2 gold medals. 2! So what was all the fuss about? What was her secret sauce? To get that, you have to understand who she was. See, she wasn't your typical educator. Not even close. She was something totally, radically new. Maria Montessori was a medical doctor. In fact, she was the first woman in all of Italy to earn that degree. Now, this is absolutely crucial. She didn't come at education with a bunch of theories about teaching. No, she came at it with the rigorous observational mind of a scientist. For her, the classroom wasn't a classroom. It was her lab. And this is where she had this huge breakthrough. Early in her career, she was working with children who had learning difficulties. Back then, everyone saw them as having a medical problem that needed to be treated. But she saw something different. She realized it wasn't a medical issue, it was a pedagogical one, a problem that could be solved with the right education and the right environment. So she just applied the scientific method. It was a constant cycle. First, she'd observe the children, like really, really watch them. Then she'd come up with a hypothesis about what they needed. Next, she'd design these very specific materials to test her idea. And finally, she'd put them in her classroom lab and see what happened. And here is the proof in the pudding. It's a fantastic story. In her very first school, the famous Casa de Bambini, her friends all donated a bunch of regular toys for the kids. But a funny thing happened. The adults were shocked to see that the children almost always chose to work with her special learning materials instead of the toys. It proved her theory. Kids have this natural built-in drive to learn and work. Her success was off the charts. But, when you rise that high, that fast, you become a target. Her rapid takeover of American education put her on a collision course with the existing powers that be. And it led to an epic showdown. The whole thing came to a head in 1914 with the publication of this one book. This was it. This was the intellectual takedown that stopped the entire Montessori movement dead in its tracks. And the author? A guy named William Kilpatrick. He was a professor at Columbia and a major disciple of, you guessed it, John Dewey, the very same man who'd introduced Montessori at Carnegie Hall. And Kilpatrick's critique was just brutal. He basically said her entire scientific foundation was old, outdated, and just plain wrong. And you can tell a lot from the tone of his attack. It's telling. Throughout his whole book, he respectfully calls his mentor Professor Dewey. But Montessori, one of the first female medical doctors in Italy, he just dismisses her as Madame Montessori. It's a subtle dig, for sure, but it really hints at the bias she was up against. At its heart, this was a massive philosophical clash. Kilpatrick argued her system was too rigid and restrictive. He called her learning materials a meager diet and said the teacher was way too passive. He just didn't get it. He couldn't see that in her method, freedom and discipline weren't opposites. They both grew out of the child's intense focus on their work. But here, this might be the ugliest part of the whole critique.
Kilpatrick basically argued that, sure, her methods might be fine for poor kids in Rome, with their inferior backgrounds, but they just weren't good enough for American children. It was condescending, it was xenophobic, and it painted her whole philosophy as something foreign and second-rate.
And the attack worked. Montessori's star in America just fizzled out. But here's the thing. That's not the end of the story. The real mystery isn't just about why she vanished, it's about how, in the end, she secretly won. The impact was immediate and devastating. Kilpatrick's book became required reading for educators, and it completely poisoned the well. By 1920, the Montessori frenzy was over. Her name just disappeared from the conversation. But here's the crazy twist in our story. While her name vanished, her revolutionary ideas didn't go anywhere. In fact, they did the opposite. They got absorbed into the mainstream, becoming so common that we totally forgot where they even came from. Seriously, her ideas are hidden in plain sight. Just think about any modern preschool or kindergarten. Child-sized furniture? That was her. Open, multi-age classrooms? Her again. The whole idea of kids choosing their own work, of peer tutoring, even the concept of an educational toy? All of it. These things are the absolute bedrock of modern education, and they all trace straight back to her. So the irony is just incredible, isn't it? Kilpatrick won the battle back in 1914, but Montessori quietly ended up winning the entire war. Her foreign ideas became so fundamentally American, so deeply woven into our schools, that we don't even think of them as Montessori anymore. We just think of them as, well, as education. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Her legacy became invisible precisely because it became universal. And that leaves us with one last big question. What other great, revolutionary ideas are out there, hidden in plain sight, that we've adopted so completely we've forgotten the revolutionaries who first gave them to us?